آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. To proceed. Well, today inshallah we will cover the rulings on debt or ahkam ad-dayn. Didn't we just cover the rulings on debt last time? Weren't we just talking about debt last time? We were talking about what? Qard, which means loans, which is one basically source of liability or debt. One source of liability or debt, and that's important to understand. That debt or liability does not only result from loans. Debt or liability, it just means that you owe somebody money. It does not have to be always a result of borrowing money from them. You could have purchased a product from them with a deferred payment. You still owe them money. You could have hurt them, inflicted a wound on them or something. You owe them the indemnity for that. Could have married someone and did not pay the dowry or the sadaq completely. You owe them money. So, it's not only loan. Imam al-Qudamah rahimahullah ta'ala, who died in the year 620 after Hijrah, in his book al-Umdat, which is a Hanbali manual or summary or what else? Matn anyway. It's a Hanbali Matn summary manual. Abridged text, said in the chapter on the rulings of debt, من لزمه دين مؤجل لم يطالب به قبل أجله ولم يحجر عليه من أجله ولم يحل بفلسه ولا بموته وإذا وثقه الورثة برهن أو كفيل. Okay. من لزمه دين مؤجل, one who is liable for a debt that is deferred with a deferred due date. One who is liable for a debt with a deferred due date. A debt with a deferred due date. لم يطالب به قبل أجله is not required to pay it off before its due date. Is not required to pay it off before its due date. وَلَمْ يُحْجَرْ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ أَجْلِهِ is not to be interdicted. Hajr is interdiction, is legal seizure of someone's property, basically to use it to pay off his debt. Interdicted, or not necessarily. Interdiction could also mean hajr ala hajr, we'll come back to it. Is not to be interdicted. Oh, did someone sneeze? Alhamdulillah. So is not to be interdicted for the sake of the debt. And he said, وَلَمْ يَحِلَّ بِفَلَسِهِ, the debt does not become due if the debtor is declared bankrupt. وَلَا بِمَوْتِهِ, nor will it be due if he or she dies. إذا وثقه الورثة برهن أو كفيل, as long as the heirs guaranteed it with a security, rahn or a kafil, a guarantor of appearance. A guarantor of appearance. So the first thing that he said, if I owe you money, and the due date for payment is in 3 or 4 months, you cannot ask me to pay you off today. لم يطالب به قبل أجله. He's not required to pay it before the due date. Correct? Huh? The previous chapter we said something opposite to this. Okay, good. Good. You guys are, no, that's great. You guys are awake. The last time we said that anytime you ask for your money, you're entitled to your money according to these three Imams, Imam Ahmad, and we start by Imam Ahmad because this is a Hanbali class, but chronologically we are certainly starting by Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmad. But then it is the position in the madhab, and this is also the position of Imams Abu Hanifa and Shafi'i, that it immediately, you could ask for your money anytime. Imam Malik and al-Layth and the choice of Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, they said what? He said no. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا تداينتم بدين إلى أجل مسمى فاكتبوه. Or you believe when you basically give a loan or borrow money to a certain, with a designated due date, write it down with a designated due date. Allah said with a designated due date. It's a promise. They said it's a promise. They said he's entitled because it's a non-benevolent contract. He's doing this out of the kindness of his heart. He's not bound by anything. It is his money. He can claim it back whenever he wants. And we went over this. Okay, so this time he's talking about liability. If you owe someone money and it's a debt with a deferred due date, you're not required to pay it off before the due date. That is correct. You want to say except if that debt resulted from a loan. Except if that debt resulted from a loan. In this case, yeah, just add this in the footnote. I did add it, and it's in the footnote. Except if the debt results from a loan. In this case, the Jumhur will say that you could be required to pay it off any time. If you come and tell me, I want to borrow money from you until July, I'm expecting money on July 5th, and I want to, I can still, according to the majority, come in February and tell you, I want my money back. You borrowed money from me, I want my money back. And then if I tell you, I told you I'm expecting money in July, and I borrowed money from you until July, you could say, yeah, but I changed my mind. I want my money back. The Jumhur will say you're entitled because it's your money, and because, more importantly, what? Because this was a what? Aqd tabarru', a benevolent transaction. It's a non-for-profit transaction. Non-profit transaction. And in this case, you cannot hold me to that term that we agreed on, because but if I purchase a refrigerator from you and tell you that I'll pay you in July, you cannot come and tell me, you cannot come in June or March and say, you know what, you owe me money. No, I owe you money in July, or I owe you money with a due date in July. So is that clear? Okay, good. Then except for debts are always, according to the majority, according to the Hanafis, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis, debts can always be claimed by the creditor, the lender. Loans, I'm sorry, not debts. Loans can always be claimed by the lender. The second thing he said, وَلَمْ يُحْجَرْ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ أَجْلِهِ, he is not to be interdicted. No legal seizure will be forced on his property for the sake of the debt, for the sake of paying the debt, because we said it is deferred. After the due date comes, and after they fail to pay off, and after the Hakim sort of gives them warnings to pay off their debt, then eventually interdiction will be in order. Then the Sheikh said, وَلَمْ يَحِلَّ بِفَلَسِهِ وَلَا بِمَوْتِهِ. The debt does not become due if the debtor is declared bankrupt. لَمْ يَحِلَّ بِفَلَسِهِ. The debt does not become due when the debtor becomes bankrupt or is declared bankrupt. So if the debtor is declared bankrupt, and the court would announce that this person is bankrupt. Therefore, if you deal with this person during that period when he's bankrupt, don't think, after he was announced bankrupt, don't think that you will come and claim your money or your dues from the property that will be seized for the benefit of the creditors that were dealing with him before that declaration is made. All the creditors that were dealing with this man before the declaration of falas or bankruptcy can claim, their rights, their property, their money from the wealth that will be under legal seizure by the court, that man's wealth that will be put under legal seizure. Creditors before the declaration of bankruptcy will come and ask for, if you transact, if you make business with this person after the declaration of bankruptcy, you're not entitled until the interdiction is removed. And then you could go after the person, because the money or your rights are not binding in the property of that person, because you did it yourself. We declared him bankrupt. You made business with him. It is your fault. You pay for it. You will have to wait until we remove the hajr, the interdiction, the legal seizure on his property. And then keep in mind, because this is an important thing, an important difference between Islam and some of the modern laws, or Islamic laws, some of the modern laws, is that when someone is indebted in Islam, the debt will be binding on his dhimma. Dhimma basically is very hard to translate. How do you translate dhimma?
Male inheritors?
Huh?
The male inheritors?
No. The dhimma of the person is
Financial responsibility, right? Just states.
There's like
Liable.
guarantors. Executors?
yeah. Huh?
The executors of the will?
No.
He always liable person. Person, it doesn't drop. It's always going to.
Yeah, that's the meaning eventually. That once you're indebted, you're always liable. It's stuck to your dhimma, to your sort of liability. It is the religious and moral liability, religious and moral liability. But it can never be translated, by the way. Yeah. But anyway. So it is, you're always liable. It's always in your dhimma. Because there is a difference between your property and your dhimma. Your dhimma is not interdicted. Your liability is not interdicted. It is your property. So whatever is, basically whatever accrues to your dhimma becomes binding on you to pay off later after the legal seizure is removed. Anyway, so the creditors will all be entitled to the money that has been seized by the court, except people that made business with the person after the declaration of bankruptcy, and except the creditors to whom he owes or she owes money with a deferred due date. Deferred due date. So, if someone came, we declared that person bankrupt in February and put a legal seizure on his property and his wealth in March, and someone sold them a car in December of the previous year with a due date for payment in July. We put a legal seizure on the property of this person, and we will distribute the property of this person between the creditors. This fellow is not going to get anything for now. He's not going to get anything. Why? Because his debt does not become due, his money or right does not become due to be paid except in July. So, لم يحل بفلسه, the debt does not become due if the debtor is declared bankrupt. ولا بموته, nor will it be due if he or she dies, given that the inheritors, the heirs, guarantee it, يوثقونه, they guarantee the debt with a security or a kafil, otherwise it becomes due. Okay, so if someone, if someone dies in February and he owes money to somebody, but it is due in July, the money does not become, the due date does not move from July to February, according to the stronger position in the madhab. According to a different narration in the madhab, the money does become due upon death. Death makes all liabilities due immediately, because the creditor, he owes me money. He died. I should take it now from the estate, before it gets divided, and I have to worry about running after the heirs or stuff like this. And in all honesty, I just like that other position, the weaker position, a little bit more, because when the person dies, the creditor should be entitled to getting their money, and instead of dividing the estate and then the debtor going after the heirs like 6 months later to figure out who's going to pay him. Anyway, but if the inheritors refuse to guarantee the money, the money that will be due in July, if the inheritors refuse to guarantee the money for the creditor with security or kafil, which is a guarantor of appearance, the money becomes due immediately. You have to pay immediately. So you have to guarantee, the inheritors will have to find a kafil. Kafil would be what? Guarantor of appearance. Someone who will guarantee for the creditor that these people who owe the money will show to court when the money becomes due. They will not disappear, they will not vanish. I will bring them to court. I will be responsible for their showing up on the day, on the due date. If they don't show up, I'm responsible for the money. I will pay it off. But if they show up, I'm not responsible for the money. That is different from the damin in the Hanbali madhab in particular, who is a guarantor of payment, not simply a guarantor of appearance, a guarantor of payment. If the person shows up and he is unable to pay, the kafil is off the hook. The damin is not. the Damin guarantees that one of us will pay you off. If the original debtor will not pay you off, I will pay you off. The kafil guarantees for the creditor only one thing. That debtor will show up on the due date. I will bring him to court if you desire. He'll show up, he'll not vanish, not disappear. If he disappeared or she disappeared and I was not able to bring them to you, I will pay. I will be responsible for the payment. So the inheritors in this case will have to say to the debtor, to the creditor, your money is due in July. We will give you rahn, we will give you security. That also gives some room. Honestly, this opinion also is not without validation. That gives some room for the inheritors. Let's say they did not want to divide the estate now. They did not want to sell off their property now. They wanted to wait around. The deceased owed the creditor $20,000, $200,000. They do not want to sell their stuff right now for any reason. They can tell him, we will give you security to keep with you until the due date of July. In July, we will give you all your money back. Or at least you'll have the security, basically, to recoup your investment. Is that clear? A co-signer depends on what is meant. Co-signing is just co-signing. So,
nowadays, if you take a loan out, you have a co-signer.
well, the co-signer nowadays, particularly within our context, I think he is a damin, not just a kafil. So he's a guarantor of payment, not just a guarantor of appearance, a guarantor of payment. I don't think that there is, in our, at least here in America, I don't think that there is such a thing like guarantor of appearance, right? Huh? They'll guarantee the appearance. Otherwise, what happens? They go to jail? Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. But that's what it means anyway. And then the Sheikh said, وَإِنْ أَرَادَ سَفَرًا يَحِلُّ الدَّيْنُ قَبْلَهُ أو قبل مدته أو الغزو تطوعا فلغريمه منعه إلا أن يوثقه بذلك. وإن أراد سفرا يحل الدين قبل مدته أو الغزو تطوعا فلغريمه منعه إلا أن يوثقه بذلك. If the debtor embarks on a journey that will last past the due date or volunteers for a military expedition, his creditor has the right to stop him or her unless the debtor guarantees the payment with that, which is the security, rahn, or kafil, guarantor of appearance. Now, I owe you money. It's due in July. Due in July. And in January, you want to travel. You want to travel, and you're either coming back in April or you're coming back in August. You're traveling, you're either coming back in April or you're coming back in August, but the money will become, the due date is July. The Sheikh makes a distinction here between whether you're coming back in April or coming back in August. The Sheikh says if you're coming back in August, there is no problem. In August, there is no problem. I'm sorry. You're coming back before, yeah, if you're coming back in April, there is no problem. If you're coming back in August and the money will be due in July, in this case, you have to give me security or guarantor of appearance. Otherwise, I can prevent you from proceeding. That is the weaker position in the Hanbali madhab, by the way. In the stronger position in the Hanbali madhab, they don't make a distinction between April or August. You just don't travel. He has the right,
I'm sorry, but this day and age, you could even schedule a payment online with your account. You don't even have to come back or don't show up. You could just do stuff in a matter of 20 seconds. You can move money from one account to another. Or you can schedule a payment.
Well, if they don't prevent you from travel nowadays, then that's fine. It is just that, it's just fine. No, the idea here is like it is also, it's also a reality check for many of us, the social justice warriors, that things which, to fight for social justice is a good thing, by the way. I'm not condemning social justice warriors, but I'm just saying that many of them exaggerate and are a little bit too much, and they don't have any reality check. But the laws, like when you're always sort of like condemning capitalism and condemning, really, like much of the stuff that you condemn is pretty reasonable, if not compassionate. Much of the laws that you're just like making them look so sinistrous and evil, they're either reasonable or even compassionate. Anyway, that's a different story. But the point here is what? Is that, yeah, so, but can he prevent them from proceeding on the Hajj after they put their ihram on? In the madhab, no, but Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said that if they really, if that really is, if there is a risk for their money, then they have the right to demand security or guarantor of appearance or something to guarantee their money. Then the Sheikh said, وَإِنْ كَانَ حَالًا عَلَى مُعْسِرٍ وَجَبَ إِنْذَارُهُ. In the case of insolvency, at the time of payment, the debtor is granted a respite. And that is even in our modern laws in this country. People are given respite, right? And then even the legal seizure and bankruptcy laws, they don't come after you because it is your liability. You're not going to be liable after you're declared completely bankrupt. There will be no pending liabilities after you acquire money. In fiqh, if you're in debt, you're always in debt unless you are forgiven by the creditor. And if the creditor forgives you, then they forgive you. Certainly, the creditor will not; they will not sell you. Basically, so the Prophet ﷺ said one time to creditors, خُذُوا مَا وَجَدْتُمْ وَلَيْسَ لَكُمْ إِلَّا ذَلِكَ. Take whatever you find, and you're not entitled to anything beyond this. So at that time, when someone had jaiha, someone had, like a sort of an aphid that afflicted their fruits, and they lost their money, the Prophet ﷺ said to the creditors, take whatever you are entitled to, and you're not entitled to anything beyond that, because you're just not going to sell the guy. He has no more money. Yet, in Islam, after this point, If the guy comes back in the future and acquires some wealth, they can come back and claim, because it makes sense also. It makes sense also. And if the government wants to forgive or to pardon or to, do whatever they want, that is compassionate and nice, and they should be thanked. But for individuals, you took money from me, you became bankrupt. Yes, I'm not going to sell you now to get my money back. But when you acquire wealth in the future, yes, I'm entitled to my money. You still took money from me. You still owe me money. I'm entitled to my money. So you could come back and claim the money in the future. Because also there are loopholes in this bankruptcy, chapter 11, chapter whatever, 7, chapter this or that. There are some people who go in and out of bankruptcy on constant basis here. There are some particularly business people who just in and out and in and out. And that certainly is something that cannot be tolerated or should not be tolerated. Anyway. Then the Sheikh said, وَإِنْ كَانَ حَالًا عَلَى مُعْسِرٍ وَجَبَ إِنْذَارُهُ. In the case of insolvency at the time of payment, the debtor is granted a respite. وإن ادعى الإعسار حلف وخلي سبيله إلا أن يعرف له مال قبل ذلك فلا يقبل قوله إلا ببينة. If the debtor alleges insolvency, he or she is to make an oath and be released unless it is known beforehand that the debtor has wealth, in which case the claim will not be accepted without evidence. Okay. If I have no money, if I am mu'sir, I am not going to be put in jail because I am mu'sir. If there is possibility that I have money, a probability or propensity that I have money, I'll be put in jail until I come up with the money. That's in Sharia. But if I have no money and can't prove it, or there is no precedent, there is no previous proof that I had money before, I'm just like a very regular guy, I have no money, no one can prove that I had money at one point. In this case, all I need to do is take an oath and say, Wallahi, I have no money, and you will be released. You will be released. What does that mean? It means that you will not be put in jail. It does not mean that the debt will be dropped. You're still indebted. Once some money shows up, like some wealth of yours shows up, you will be required to pay off your creditor. And the idea, the word creditor itself, we always feel sort of some animosity towards creditors. The creditor could be a good guy who will give you a loan. It's not their fault that you're delinquent or that you're like this or that. That they are entitled to their money. The word creditor is not it's not like a dirty word. But nowadays, when people think of creditor, they think of the evil guy. You think creditor, Bank of America, just like, or Chase or something. So if you claim to be insolvent, you have no money, insolvent, no money. Then you take an oath and you go home. You'll still be required to pay off the debt when you have the money. Someone knew before that you had money, you had a property, you had livestock, you had some money, someone can prove that you have like a bank account and so on. In this case, you can't just take an oath, you will have to give a bayyina that you lost your money. Bayyina, proof that you lost the money, not a simple oath. Then the Sheikh said, وَإِنْ كَانَ مُوسِرًا لَزِمَهُ وَفَاؤُهُ فَإِنْ أَبَى حُبِسَ حَتَّى يُوَفِّيَ. If the debtor is solvent, they have to make the due payment. But if they refuse, they are to be jailed until full payment of the debt. Because the rationale behind this, and the first one to put someone in jail because of this was Shuraih. So it's not the Prophet, it's not the companions, it's even Shuraih. That's why, the Sharia evolves and develops, except for the most sort of, anyway. But Shuraih was the first people to put someone in jail because they couldn't pay off their debt. And acceptance by the community was fine, and it became part of our Sharia, part of fiqh. And the rationale in this case was a solvent debtor would not prefer jail over paying off their creditor. So if you put them in jail and leave them there, and jail also during their times was not particularly that fancy. And it's cold, and you get to sleep on the ground and stuff like this. They didn't really provide any sort of luxuries. No hot catered foods. So at one point you will feel a little bit too uncomfortable to keep procrastinating or to keep being delinquent, and you will pay off your creditor, your lender, etc. Okay, so they get put in jail. And that, by the way, did not mean that you're particularly evil or something. People recognize that you could be put in jail just because you're Mu'sir. Do you know who is the most famous one to be put in jail because of this? Ibn Sirin, yes. Muhammad ibn Sirin, he actually was put in jail. Muhammad ibn Sirin was basically the equal of al-Hasan al-Basri, if someone does not know Muhammad ibn Sirin. Was the equal of al-Hasan al-Basri, was one of the greatest tabi'een. And he was put in jail because he was overwhelmed by debt. So he bought oil for 40,000 dirhams and they found, and there are some other accounts, but this is the most famous account. They found a mouse in one of the barrels, and he feared that the remains of the mouse, the mouse was not just only in that barrel, that the mouse was, to begin with, in the squeezer, ma'asara. How do you say that? Anyway, in the machine that made the oil, squeezed the olives into oil. He feared that the mouse was in the machine and that all the oil, all the barrels, have some remains or have become impure. So he basically discarded all of the barrels, and he fell into severe debt because of this. He was counting on selling the oil and making some profit, got into severe debt, and then he went to jail. And so the guard would say to him every night, "Why don't you go to your family and come back in the morning before anyone wakes up?" And then he would refuse. He said, "Wallahi la akhunu sultan." By Allah, I will not commit treason to the sultan. Who was the sultan? Hajjaj. Or at least al-Wali. He was al-Wali at the time, the governor at the time. And then when Anas ibn Malik died, he asked for Ibn Sirin to come and wash him. Part of the wasiyah of Anas ibn Malik is that Ibn Sirin is the one to wash him. So that the children, and Anas ibn Malik had so many children and grandchildren. So that they went to the Qadi, and they asked for a permission for Ibn Sirin to just go and wash Anas ibn Malik and then walk back into the prison. And he did. So anyway, yes, the law is the law. And then everyone would want, have fuzzy good feelings and say, how do you do that? That's so bad. And how could you put someone like a nice guy like this in jail because he could not pay off his debt? That's the law. And because the law aims to protect, the society. And the law has to have, sharp standards that cannot be molded standards, And some people will suffer, but ultimately, you're not making, we have finite choices, and we're not always, there is no utopia on earth. No utopia on earth. You're making hard choices, and many times the choices that you make are not particularly utopian in any way. Then the Sheikh said, فإن كان ماله لا يفي بدينه كله فسأل غرماءه فإن كان ماله لا يفي بدينه كله فسأل غرماؤه الحاكم أجر عليه لزمه إجابتهم. If the debtor's wealth is not enough to pay the debt fully and his or her creditors have asked the judge to interdict him or her, the judge has to consent to their request. So interdiction has to be initiated by the creditors. They want a legal seizure to guarantee the payment, to guarantee payment, that they'll be paid. They want legal seizure on his or her property, the debtor's property. They go to the court, they ask for a legal seizure, Hajj or interdiction. Interdiction, there are two different types of interdiction. There is interdiction لحظ المحجور عليه, for the benefit of the interdicted. That is, if the interdicted is young, insane, or foolish, safi, young, insane, or foolish, then you're doing the interdiction for their own benefit. And then there is interdiction for others, لحظ الغير, interdiction for the interests of others, that's the creditors, and that is for the muflis, the bankrupt who is in debt. You do this interdiction, legal seizure on their property. They cannot dispose of their property. Then the Sheikh said, وَيَتَوَلَّى الْحَاكِمْ قَضَاءَ دَيْنِهِ. The judge takes charge of paying the person's debts. ويبدأ بمن له أرش جناية من رقيقه فيدفع إلى المجني عليه أقل الأمرين من أرشها أو قيمة الجناية. He starts by paying compensation for a crime committed by the debtor's slave. He would pay to the victim the least of two, either the compensation or the value of the perpetrator. And alhamdulillah, we don't have this anymore, so we can move to the second one, which is ثم بمن له رهن فيدفع إليه أقل الأمرين من دينه أو ثمن رهنه وله أسوة الغرماء في بقية دينه. Then the judge would pay the creditor who has a security, a rahn, whichever is the least, either the debt or the value of the security. As for the rest of the loan, the creditor will be treated like the rest of the creditors. So now we put the legal seizure on his property, and we will liquidate the property. Let us say that we will liquidate the property, and we have one, he owes the people $200,000, and because it's late and we will have to finish soon, I'm going to use easy numbers. He owes $200,000 to people, and his property, everything that we collected, is worth $100,000. Is worth $100,000. It is not going to be like everybody gets 50%. Why? Because some people are more entitled than others. First, the people who already have a rahn, people who are smart, and that's completely fair. People who are smart and asked for security, they get the first pass. If that debtor had given you security, then the qadi will tell you, give me the rahn back, give me that property that he gave you back. If he gave you like whatever, like a diamond ring, he said, give me this, give me 2 tons of wheat or whatever, keep this as security. give you a diamond ring. Then in this case, yeah, can we take 10 more minutes and just finish this? Is it okay for everybody? If someone has to leave, please do. So if someone left if someone took security, then for those people, they will get to go first. And the Qadi will take the security back from them. And then the Qadi will do what? Yeah, will sell this and give them, okay, let's say one of the creditors was entitled to $20,000. The security is worth $15,000. Or the security was worth $25,000. What if the rahan or the security was $25,000 and they are entitled to 20? How much do they get? 20 only. What if the security was 15 and they are entitled to 20? How much do they get? 15 only. The least of the two numbers. Only 15. And then they'll be entitled to 5,000. But the 5,000, they will not take it before everybody else. Now that they are entitled to 5,000, we will see how much the percentage that everybody is getting afterwards, all the creditors. If all the creditors will end up walking away with 80% of their entitlement, this person will get his 15,000 because that was, for the value of the security that he had, and will get 80% of the 5,000. 80% of the 5,000. Makes perfect sense, right? Easy, perfect sense. So eventually they will end up, let's say 80% of the 5,000 is 4,000. So they ended up with 4,000 and the 15,000, they ended up taking 19,000. Had they not had the security, they would have ended up with how much? 80% of 20? 16. So it made perfect sense for them to ask for security. Then the Sheikh said, so the first people that we would ask the creditor, does anyone have rahan? Give me the rahan back, and then, okay. So then, ثم من وجد متاعه, and this is the position of the majority, Maliki, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis. ثم من وجد the following paragraph is the position of the majority. ثم من وجد متاعه الذي باعه بعينه لم يتلف بعضه ولم يزد زيادة متصلة ولم يأخذ من ثمنه شيئا فله أخذه لقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من أدرك متاعه بعينه عند إنسان قد أفلس فهو أحق به من غيره ويقسم الباقي بين الغرماء على قدر ديونهم. When someone who sold something to the now bankrupt debtor and never received payment finds with that debtor his or her very same property which he or she sold safe and sound, and it did not appreciate in a way inseparable from the original capital, and the creditor had not received any payment at all, it is the creditor's right to take it. The Prophet ﷺ said, as is reported by Bukhari Muslim from Abu Hurairah, if a creditor finds the exact property with a bankrupt or debtor, he or she has more right to it than anyone else. The remainder is to be divided. Among the creditors in proportion to their loans. Long story. Okay, so I sold you a car. Let's not use the car because it's going to be... I sold you a piece of furniture, couch, dining table. I sold you a table. And then it was a deferred payment sale. You did not pay any part of the price of the table. So I am entitled to the entire price of the table. You became bankrupt. They put a legal seizure on your property. I go and I find the table among the seized property. I say to the judge, this is mine. I will take it. I'm entitled to it. When am I entitled to it? I'm entitled to it if the debtor is still alive, because the Prophet ﷺ, and that is reported by Abu Dawood, فَإِنْ مَاتَ الْمُشْتَرِي فَهُوَ أَسْوَةُ الْغُرَمَاء, and if the debtor dies, then the creditor will be like everybody else, like all the creditors. The debtor is still alive. The guy who bought the table from me, it did not become the state that was passed on to his inheritors. That's one thing. The other thing is, I find the table safe and sound. It's not with a broken leg or anything, because in this case, I would be entitled to my money, not just this table. So, and also it did not appreciate in a way that cannot be separated from the original property or commodity, such as a cow that got much fatter, a fatter cow. If I find my cow, but it is now fatter, then I can't take it, because I'm entitled to the money that I paid, not to the fatter cow. I can't take it. If she was a little bit thinner and I wanted to take it, I would not be able to take it. But the table with a broken leg is different from a cow that's a little bit thinner. I would not take the table with a broken leg. I would be entitled to the money. So I should not have paid off any part of the price. The debtor should be alive, not his heirs. This property is present safe and sound. It did not appreciate in a way that cannot be separated from the original property. Let us say it appreciated in a way that is separable. It gave birth to like some little goat. I still can take this one. And there is controversy within the Hanbali madhab if I am entitled to this one. But the stronger position is that I'm not entitled to this one. I'm just entitled to the original goat that I sold you. So is that clear? That's clear. So this is how we distribute everything. Just remember two things. People who have run, they will go first, and then people who will find their own property safe and sound can take it, and then the rest will be divided in proportion among the creditors. Is that it? That's it. Then the Sheikh said, وَيُنْفَقُ عَلَى الْمُفْلِسِ وَعَلَى مَنْ تَلْزَمُهُ مُؤْنَتُهُ مِنْ مَالِهِ إِلَى أَنْ يُقَسَّمْ أو يُقْسَمْ. The expenses of the bankrupt debtor and his or her dependents are to be paid from the debtor's money until distribution is over. Until distribution is over, we will spend on the debtor. This guy, now that we have put a legal seizure on his money, he still has to eat, and his family will have to eat. So we will factor this in. We will keep some money for their sustenance. Unless the guy is an employee and he gets like money on a regular basis, then that will be enough for him. But even if the money that he earns is not sufficient for him and his family, then we will keep some from this money that we seized for the sustenance of this person. Because it is, the muflis is not someone who is evil or criminal. The muflis, we're just trying to protect the rights of others. It is not like we're trying to punish that person, we're trying to protect the rights of others. And then the Sheikh said, وَإِنْ وَجَبَ لَهُ حَقٌّ بِشَاهِدْ فَأَبَى أَنْ يَحْلِفْ لَمْ يَكُنْ لِغُرَمَائِهِ أَنْ يَحْلِفُوا. If the bankrupt debtor was found by the testimony of one witness to be entitled to some property, and he or she refused to make an oath to acquire it, his creditors are not allowed to make an oath. Okay, so we put a legal seizure on his money, and someone came and testified that this is not just simply his property. He also owns something else. He owns that goat. He owns that cow. And I testify to that. And that cow is with, let us say, Hassan or Ali. If you have a witness that you're entitled to some property and it is in the possession of someone else, what do you need to get that property? Just your oath. Because, that's according to the majority, not according to the Hanafis. According to the Hanafis, you have to have two witnesses. You cannot, one witness and oath is not sufficient. But according to the Maliki, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis, it is sufficient. Can they force him to take an oath to take that camel from Ali? No, they cannot force him to take the oath. Can they take the oath on his behalf? No, the creditors take the oath on their behalf. Why are they interested in doing this? Because they want to add this to the money so that they could get more. Particularly if this is very valuable. Why would he be interested in not claiming the camel or the goat? Because it will go under legal seizure the minute it becomes recognized as his. Also, if Ali came and said, I am also entitled, he owes me money, and that debtor said, yes, Ali is entitled, he owes me money, Ali's statement will not be accepted, even with the admission of the debtor. So you have two people here, and that is something that you could use in al-Ghaz. You have iqrar, acknowledgement, and you have claim. So how could Ali say, Muhammad owes me $2,000. Muhammad says, I owe Ali $3,000. The court says, no, we're not buying this. Yes, because if Ali can basically agree with Muhammad, your money is under seizure, let me come in with the creditors, be another creditor, and get some of the money under legal seizure, and then we can divide it among ourselves. Or I'll give it to you, or whatever, but we can make a deal. The court would not buy this. After the removal of the legal seizure, yes, Ali can say, he owes me, and so on and so forth. But not during the legal seizure. The court will not buy this, because the court will not accept sort of any tricks to get the debtor off the hook.
They would accept it with proof.
They will accept it with bayina. If Ali presented, if Ali presented proof, bayina, not just the acknowledgement. The acknowledgement is the best bayina ever. But here, the acknowledgement will not be accepted. But if he presented a proof, document this or that, then he will be entitled. Very sorry for the delay.